out here on a beautiful sunny day, and I'm going to talk to you about my RV refrigerator. I have a 3 cubic foot Dometic compressor refrigerator, and I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love that I have a fridge. I hate that it's so tiny. So today's video is over a year in the making, and it's a culmination of lots and lots of trial and error in my attempt to maximize capacity in the fridge and also make it more user-friendly for me to get in and out of there. I'm going to share with you all of the things that have worked out really well for me, and hopefully some of them will help you guys out too. All of this food that you see on the table, I'm able to put in my tiny little refrigerator. I'm going to show you how I do that. So the first couple of camping trips that I took, I found myself sitting in the bathroom to look into my refrigerator and find things. That became very awkward very quickly, and so like many of you, I started using baskets to just pull things in and out. So I should note that what I have ultimately done is I've rearranged the order of my shelves. That middle shelf has a little clip that holds it in place. I actually removed the clip. The other thing that I removed was the drip pan. I know that there's a need for a drip pan because there's a lot of moisture that happens in these little refrigerators. But my frustration with every time I tried to remove the drip pan or clear it, I had water spilling out everywhere. I just ultimately decided to get rid of it. There's another reason that I wanted to remove the drip pan, and that was because I wanted to take my top shelf and change it and put it in the very top slot. And that's weird because I'm going to show you this. I tried filming this in my RV. It's just too tight to get to the refrigerator. So this would be the back of the refrigerator. This is my top shelf, and the freezer is probably about here. So it's a super skinny little shelf, which you may think is somewhat useless. And it was and is just like that. But what I ended up doing is, if you look at the bottom of the freezer compartment, there are some slots in the metal framing. I decided to use those slots, and so what I actually did was my test, which I did film and I'm going to show you, that was about a year ago. I just used ribbon because I was camping when I had this brainstorm, and that's what I had in the camper. I've since redone it, and I've used paracord, which works much better. But I'm just going to walk you through it. In essence, what I did is I took that paracord, I threaded it through the holes in the freezer and connected it, looped it back around the wire. So elastic is important, and you want to keep it relatively tight, and this is why. What I did is I turned this shelf into a sliding shelf, and the elastic just makes it not fall out. So essentially I can slide the shelf forward, the elastic holds it, I can tip it down, and I can access whatever it is that I've put in there, and then it tucks away very neatly. So that's been amazing because it has now freed up the rest of the cavity of the refrigerator is much bigger and deeper for me to put things in. What I do, because I don't have a drip tray anymore, is I use these sponges, and I actually place them in here. I'll put two in at a time. And that does two things. One is it kind of holds everything I put in here in place. It catches all the moisture, and that way when you are doing this and you're tipping that thing down, you don't have water running all over you. So that was my solution to that. It's worked out really well. I am not a full-timer, so for me it became paramount to have a system where I could pack stuff up in the house and literally just carry it, plug it into the refrigerator, and call it a day. The advantage of my system now is that when I want to find things, I don't have to snorkel around in the refrigerator. I can literally just pull out a tray, put it on the counter, do what I need to do, put it back in. Saves me a lot of angst in finding things that I can't find. And it also helps keeping things cold because I don't have that refrigerator door open indefinitely while I'm trying to find the perfect piece of cheese. So I bought a lot of containers and baskets and systems, and I tried multiple configurations. This is what works best for me in the end, and I'm going to share them with you to save you all a whole lot of headache. So I don't remember the brands, but I will put them in the comments below. This system comes in multiple sizes. This is the exact size that I chose. You can see that it has a little bit of an angle here. I put this on the very bottom of the refrigerator, no shelves, and they fit side by side perfectly. They literally slide in, and this front edge fits behind the front slot on the floor of the fridge. If you have a fridge, if you have this fridge and you try it, you will know what I'm talking about. Don't try to put these two side by side anywhere else in the refrigerator other than on the very bottom. They will be too wide for any of the shelves. They only work on the bottom, FYI. So having these is super handy because I can fill them up with whatever I want. I'm not designated to certain sizes, etc. And then when I need to get one or the other out of the fridge, I'm literally just pulling this whole thing out, doing what I need to do and putting it back in. So that has worked really well for me. On my second shelf, which I place about this high, I use this. This is a different brand, but a similar kind of feel and look. These fit on any of the shelves up higher in the refrigerator. The little spines on the side of the fridge cavity makes it a little bit narrower higher up than it is down at the bottom. And this has worked exceptionally well for me. I literally have this on the bottom, this on the top, and then I have my little wire rack system at the top. So that's all I'm using. I can fill this up with the bulk of my food and take it in and out as needed. If I am, I'm going to do a profile. If I am pulling stuff out of the refrigerator, I'm just literally taking this out. Now, I will say, if you have the Hymer Active like I do, some of those refrigerator doors do not open all the way. This might be a little bit too big to clear what's happening in the door. Mine opens all the way, so I can pull this in and out very easily. So, two different brands, two different sizes. I will put all of that information down below. And after literally dozens and dozens of different things, this has worked out really well for me. I've been using this system. I've been using this system for about 6 months now. If you don't want to spend that kind of money, because these can be a little pricey, and you're a Tupperware user, the one thing that I will say is, if you're going to use Tupperware, try to use square Tupperware. That will maximize your capacity. Again, I tested multiple Tupperwares because I don't really use them at home, and I'm using that term generically. I guess that's a brand name. Plastic containers. So I found a brand I really like. This is not, I have no connection with this brand. This is just through trial and error. This particular system is the Ziploc system. And this is why I really like it and it really works, is they are square in shape as opposed to round. So I'm utilizing all of that capacity. These particular ones have lids that have, it's not exactly a locking mechanism, but it helps things to not slide around. They also have one finger lid placement, which is really handy. So you can take a couple of these, put them on top of each other. Let's just put this lid in here. And they really don't move around a whole lot. So in the little refrigerator that I have, you can put 4 of these on a shelf. And if you have 2 shelves, that means you have 8 of these containers, which is a lot of food. So if you're a weekend camper and you like to prepare your meals ahead of time so that you're not really fussing with food because you're too busy doing other things, this is a really nice system because you can put a meal in each one of these, and then you're just grabbing one of these out when you go. So 8 of these will fit in the refrigerator with your little skinny shelf on the top. It comes in multiple sizes. They have smaller ones and little square ones. So super handy. They work really well. If you don't have liquids in them, if you're just storing like veggies or something, you can actually fit 5 of these on the side on a shelf. But they're not liquid tight. So don't do that if you have liquids. The other little point I wanted to mention is, and this is why I like these, they stack, as you may have noticed, really well into each other. Storage is a huge issue for us in RVs. So anything that stacks is a bonus. So these really don't take up very much space. Here's a little tip. If you don't want to be having containers stored in your precious storage space in the RV, if you have food in a container in your refrigerator, stick it in the other container and store it that way, and that way you have a spare and it's not taking up a whole lot of space. So handy little tip for Tupperware storage is to just double up in your refrigerator, and that way all you're storing in your cabinets are these skinny little tops. So that's pretty handy. The other Tupperware that I did find that I really liked, this is a Rubbermaid product, are these. So these come in different sizes, and they have a little system where they have one of those freezy packs that kind of goes into them too. I was interested in this size. I like this size. It's small. I use a lot of things like capers and nuts and that kind of thing. So this is a good size for me. What I do like about these is they do actually lock into each other. So this skinniness fits in the little shelves on the door. So I can literally put these in the door if I choose for easy grab and go. It's great for snacks for the kids too, if you want to preload them and then you're just grabbing a box. Washable, etc. I will say the really tiny version of this I found did not lock very well into each other. So just an FYI, this size and the size above it, bigger than this, locked really well. The teeny tiny ones, not so much. Very handy. This also will fit in that skinny little top shelf. If you want to slide a bunch of these in there, you can do that too. So those are the plastic containers that I have chosen to use. They work really well for me. So the next little gizmo that I have to show you has to do with holding small things. I take a lot of supplements and vitamins and things like that, and I travel a lot. And I got really tired of putting individual little things in pill boxes. That was just far too fussy for me. So I had to come up with a system where I could kind of grab and go and have everything with me and have enough quantity with me, because I never knew from one day to the next where I was going to be or how long I was going to be there. So this system I've been using for a lot of years, and I just use it in the RV as well. But this little system is called Go Stack. They come in multiple sizes. This is why I love them, because you can disconnect, reconnect, and fill as many as you want. The handle comes off. Once you have everything filled up, you can literally, these are my supplements right here. So I have this long thing, but I'm literally grabbing one thing with me. I also like to keep these temperature controlled. So I keep them in the refrigerator, and by doing this it allows me to, I normally end up with 2 stacks like this, and I keep them on that little top shelf that I told you about. But you could sort of keep them anywhere. So super handy. I use these for everything. They are pricey. I wait till they're on sale. I buy them up when they're on sale. They last a very long time. They're very handy. Supplements. They are handy for screws. I have one in the RV that's filled with fuses, little nuts and bolts, little things that I might need in the RV. Very handy for that. You could do a first aid kit. They're big enough to put Q-tips in. So these I use all the time, every day. I really, really like them. The one thing I don't like about them is they are not watertight, so you can't store liquid in them. I'm going to get to my solution for that in a minute. But I did want to point out a couple of things. Because these are pricey, some people might be turned off by that. So the other solution that I have used in the past is taking tiny little snack bags. This particular brand I get at like the dollar store. I really like them. They're small, but they're big enough where you can literally put an entire box of supplements or pills into a bag, and you can write on the outside of the bag what they are, and then you can take one of your container boxes and have all of your pills in that. So that all you're doing there is grabbing and going that guy. So that works really well. Now let's get to the liquid aspect. I'm going to clear all of this away so we have room to work. Ta-da! All right, so the liquid dilemma. I searched long and hard for this. I found two things that I liked. One was a little chunky for me, and then one ended up being perfect. And I ended up finding these. If you have babies in your world, you probably know what these are. If you don't, this is going to be a la-la light bulb moment for you. So this is called Inno Baby. They make several kinds, so you have to be careful that you buy the right ones. But these work very similarly to what I had before. They end up locking into each other. They are completely liquid tight, and they have little pores, which are great. But what's even better is you can take the lid off. So to put things in, it's easy. If you don't want to use it for liquids, you can put nuts or whatever in here. And then they just lock into each other and function in the same way that the other little system that I use functions. These also store in that handy little top shelf that I mentioned and created. They also store in the side door, in the refrigerator door compartment. So I use these for condiments. This is a super handy way to have multiple mustards, your ketchups, your mayonnaises, your barbecue sauces. I mean, all of these right here, that would be half of my refrigerator if I was to put the actual bottles and containers in the door. This way I can have dozens of condiments with me at any given time, and it takes up a tiny bit of room. I don't remember the exact ounce measurement that each one of these holds. Hopefully I'll find out and I'll post it somewhere for you all. But these have turned out to be really, really exciting for me to use because I can carry all of that stuff with me. So, Inno Baby. One of the things I discovered with the door is, you know, you have these two little shelves on the door, a bottom one and a top one. They're at a fixed height on my refrigerator. I can't adjust the height. And so in order to maximize capacity on the door, my challenge was to find containers that maximized the space on the door. So on the top shelf, these little stacking system kind of takes care of that. The other thing that I wanted was I wanted squeezy containers for things that I use a lot. Olive oil, balsamic vinegar, my own salad dressing, that kind of thing. And most of the squeeze bottles are, 12 ounces, 8 ounces. They're really short, which means you're losing a lot of capacity because you have all this space above them. So I searched high and far, and I found these. I was very excited to find these. They are pricey, be warned. I think they're used in restaurants. They come in multiple sizes. I'm using the 16 ounce because I found from a height variance on that top shelf, these were perfect. This is why I like them. They're squeezy bottles. There's two different colors. The yellow ones, I believe, are for super thin liquids, and the blue ones are for slightly thicker sauces. And what I really like about them is you can unscrew the bottom, and the top, which means you can really get in there and clean these out, because that's a big problem with a lot of squeezy bottles. So big yay for me. I did a test. First time out, I was very skeptical. I'm like, I don't know about these guys. You're supposed to store them like this so that the liquid is always ready. You just grab and go and you squeeze. I did a test with water, and I stored it in here, and I drove forever with a paper towel underneath. The paper towel was not wet. But what I do, even though that test worked, I still wasn't about to trust this tiny little valve in my jiggly refrigerator. But the beautiful part about this is you can store them like that. Just make sure that that is super tight, and you can fit a whole bunch of these in that top shelf and have large amounts of condiments, liquids, and sauces traveling with you, not taking up very much room. So very excited to find these 16 ounces. So while I'm on the subject of the refrigerator door, it's kind of skinny. You can't fit a regular fruit or milk jug in the door. It's not wide enough. So again, my dilemma was to find something where I would be maximizing capacity. I found a lot of things that were skinny enough to fit. I actually used these for a long time. I had a couple, and once again I used my little handy dandy hair ties as my identifier. And these worked really well, but I still had about this much space left on that bottom shelf where I wasn't using that. So I became somewhat obsessed to find the perfect container. And I did find something better. These are the Nalgene containers. And this is the 48-ounce container. So I can fit 4 of these in that bottom door. And 48 ounces is 4 of my green juice drinks. So you have that in the door taking up all that space, or one of these. It's pretty much a no-brainer. So 48 ounces, it's just shy of 1.5 liters for those of you that are liter oriented. Really, really awesome find. They are plastic. They are intended to be used for liquids. So it's a good plastic. I feel comfortable using this. Very, very handy to have. So I was excited to find these. The door gets a little heavy. I am a little concerned about that. I have not had a problem so far, but I am careful when I'm opening and closing it. Just a little FYI. So, yay for the liquids. Let's talk about the freezer, the teeny tiny freezer. I long ago gave up actually trying to freeze anything in it. At best, what I try to do is just keep frozen foods frozen for as long as I can. It's a tricky thing with these fridges. If you don't have a completely separate compartment, which is what I would love to have, with a separate controller and a separate compressor, condenser, whatever runs a refrigerator. It's a delicate balance between freezing your regular food in your fridge and keeping the things in your freezer frozen. So what I do instead is, with the ice cubes, I use these guys. They've been very successful for me. They're little plastic cubes filled with liquid. They keep nice and cold. They come in this container, but I don't use this container. I find it too bulky. So I actually just keep them in little bags like this. Highly recommend those, very helpful. So I have a number of these. This is missing the little spout. I have that in the RV somewhere. But these are the little rods that you freeze and then you put inside a bottle, and then you can pour from the spout in the bottle. These are really, really great because they're metal. They keep cold for a nice long time. I have a bunch of these, and if I have a glass of iced tea or something and I want to get it cool pretty quickly, I just stick a bunch of these in there and stir it around until the temperature drops some. So highly recommend, pretty handy to have. I have one of these. It's one of the sooo things. It has this inner lining that you're supposed to put in a freezer and it freezes and then you can make iced tea. I've used it, it's working well, it's pretty bulky, so the verdict is still out as to whether I'm going to keep it in my freezer, but it does get things cold fairly quickly, so pretty handy to have. Like I said, verdict's still out. Finally, I do keep a hot-cold gel pack in there. I have a cold one in the freezer, and I have one in a cupboard for the hot sections. These come in handy when you need them. What I do tend to do, I like to make my own broths and sauces and things like that. So when I'm cooking at home, I always make sure that I take some of those smaller baggies that I showed you earlier. These are the ones from the dollar store. They also just make little snack baggies. And I always make a couple of whatever I'm making. I fill them with these and I stick them in the freezer. So if I'm going off on a trip, I can grab a couple of these out of my freezer at home and stick them in the little freezer in the RV. And I have some ready-made sauces, meals, and soups to go. Handy little trip. And finally, if I'm putting things in the freezer, I like these stasher bags. I know that most of you are familiar with them. They come in multiple sizes. These are great. You can boil them, freeze them, stick them in the fridge. You can wash them out. I use these a lot. They hold a lot, and they work really well in the freezer. And I've just discovered the smaller size, which is why this one is still in the package. And these are going to be great for me, for my sauces, etc. So I am very excited to find this size. I can put a bunch of these in the freezer. And then, yes, I always have a little bottle of vodka in the freezer because that's where vodka belongs. So that's my freezer. So here's the secret to how I can fit large quantities of fresh food in that tiny fridge. I love farmers markets. I go every chance I get. And very often I will end up with large, bulky quantities of herbs or leafy greens and things like that. Pretty much I plan on chopping all of those down when I cook. So what I've started doing is I literally chop them down before I store them, and that allows me to put really large quantities into tiny little things. But when you're coming home with an enormous bag of basil, chopping that by hand can take forever. I found this little gadget, and it is a lifesaver. I've already chopped most of the basil that I brought home that was in that big pile, this huge bag. But I'm going to show you I can do it with tomatoes too. So the basil that I did chop, I ended up putting it in my little baggies, and I can keep it like this. Very often I'll make pestos, which I'll just make the whole pesto and put it in a baggie. If I want this basil to stay a little bit longer, I'll squirt a little bit of olive oil into my bag, and that just helps. For some reason it helps keep it longer that way. And if I'm cooking, I don't mind a little olive oil going in my food. So this is the simplest way to take an enormous bushel of any kind of green item and store it in a really small amount of space. That giant bag of basil ended up taking up like 4 of these little bags. So super helpful. The other thing I do, I like to use herbs. I actually grow them inside my RV. And when they get a little wild and woolly, I have to store them somehow. And so I found there's many different kinds of herb keepers. This is the one that I use. It does fit in the refrigerator door. I keep it out a lot of times, and it has a little well area for water in the bottom. This just allows them to last that much longer. So I'm just going to show you how crazy this little chopper is. I'm going to chop these tomatoes up real quick. If you are outside camping and you have a hankering for salsa, literally just, I've got a wonky table. You literally just go ahead and pull and it chops. Look, I literally have salsa now. So you can put onions, basil, tomato in there, little lime juice, and in a matter of about a minute, you have some salsa. What I do like about this system is you can take the blade out, and it comes with 3 of these and lids. You can put the lid on, stick that in your fridge, call it a day. I know this looks a little bit like an infomercial, but I was very, very excited about this. So I wanted to share it with you. Let's get this out of the way. Oops. So the other thing I use a lot of are these little string bags. I keep all of my fruits and veggies that do not need refrigeration in these, and I have hooks in my little kitchen, and that's where I hang them. If I'm going over really rocky terrain, sometimes they knock against the wall, and I'll just pull this down and stick it in my sink for that little bit of travel. But this allows me to have large quantities of fresh fruits and veggies, which I really love. So those are the tips and tricks on how I put all that food in my little fridge. I'm going to clear away my table, and I'm going to bring out my little baskets loaded with all that food and show you how that worked out. So here you have it. I have in my bottom of my refrigerator my 2 little baskets. I have my fruit in here, and my little salsa that I made is fitting in here. So that's on one side. On the other side, I have all of my dairy. I even am able to store one of those giant hunks of cheese that you can get from one of those big box stores. So there's an awful lot of dairy and cheese in that compartment. My next shelf up, I have my main compartment, which is where I have most of my proteins. I have eggs, I have sausages, there's pasta here. Alfie and I eat a lot of carrots. I keep it in the stasher bag. I even have my little containers with nuts. I only have one of them filled right now. I have one thing of arugula that I haven't repacked because I'm having a big salad when I'm done with this video. It's my little treat. So I'm going to be taking that out in a minute and consuming it. But that is literally my second shelf. And then that funny little top shelf that I told you I made, this is what I have on it. I have 2 sodas, little ones, in case anybody is a soda drinker. I have a beer in there. I have some handmade iced tea that I have, and I have my vitamins in there. If I'm traveling in the RV and I'm keeping it really cool with the AC, I can take these out and put other things in there in the fridge. But for the most part, I leave these in there just in case the RV gets hot. And then in my door, my RV door, I have oil, I have salad dressing, I have 8 condiments. So these are in my top shelf with room for a beer, which I've already started drinking. And then in the bottom shelf on the refrigerator door, I normally have 2 of these. One has water, one has my green juice, which is the equivalent of 4 of those little ones I showed you. I have one with milk, and I have a 4th one, which, you know, depending on who I'm with or what I'm doing, it'll have some other form of liquid in it. Very often it has cold brewed coffee in there. So literally, that is how I am able to put all of that in my tiny little refrigerator. And don't forget, I have stuff in the freezer too, which I showed you. So I hope you found these tips helpful, and that they make life a little bit easier for you in your RV adventures. Hope to see you along the way. Bye-bye. Anyway, that out of the way, let's talk about glass in an RV fridge, when you are not on smoother than smooth surface. You're going to have a lot of this as you rattle down the road, and it will drive you bonkers. So, I've discovered a super easy trick. I have hair ties in abundance because I use them every day. And what I decided one day was to just start using hair ties on my glass. If you are unfamiliar with hair ties, you will know that some of them come with a fabric type coating on them, and some of them come where they are strictly bare rubber. I use the bare rubber ones for my glass. That way, if I get them wet or I spill food on them, I can just rinse them under the water to get them clean. So what I do is I just randomly put 2 or 3 of these, depending on the size of the glass, on the bottles. Oops. And that way, when they are sitting next to each other in the refrigerator and you're going down the road, they're not going to touch. No more rattling. You can apply that to any kind of glassware that you have in your refrigerator. Nice little tip.